about 10 million people have actually had thoughts of suicide.
It's also your brain, I think, telling you, I don't like this, whatever this is, and I don't know how to cope with it. I don't know how to handle it, and I'm struggling to see a different way. If you are experiencing suicidal thoughts, please, 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 here in the US, call 988. Please reach out. Welcome back to Wellness Wednesday. I'm Beth Gustin, a licensed professional counselor in Colorado, here with my co-host, Robin Ennis, a licensed clinical social worker, also in Colorado. And we are glad to be back with you today. We thought we would touch on a pretty heavy topic that I think we both believe needs to be talked about more than it is. And that is the topic of suicide. It is very prevalent. Some states have higher numbers than others, but it definitely has been increasing in a number of demographics over the years. And so we thought it'd be something we should raise awareness around. September happens to be Suicide Prevention Month, and I know this is March, but I don't think it's ever a bad time to raise awareness.
Right. I agree, Beth. I don't think it's ever a bad time to raise awareness, as it is an ongoing issue. And so, a disclaimer, we are going to talk about some heavy things. So if you feel like you're not in a space to be able to, handle the material, then it's okay to press pause and come back if you want to, or just really take care of yourself and check in with yourself around this, because suicide doesn't discriminate. It impacts people of all walks of life. It's interesting, Beth, because you mentioned how it's prevalent in different states, and I was looking at the statistics on the Center for Disease and Control, and they did a study from 1999 until 2018. And particularly, they honed in on 2018, and they were saying that during that time, just in that 1 year alone, there were 48 deaths due to suicide, and the numbers keep increasing. And so that makes me wonder, because that was pre-pandemic, right? So it makes me wonder how many a year it is now if it was 48,000 in 2018.
I agree, and I don't have current numbers. I did see some studies as late as 2021 that talked about, at that time, the demographics of those with the highest rates of death by suicide were ages 25 to 35, and then ages 75 and above, with ages 85 and above having some of the highest rates. It's interesting when I read those numbers, because I've talked to a couple other therapists locally here in Colorado, and they've seen an increase more recently in the demographic ages 15 to 25. I share all that just to highlight what Robin said, that it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't matter how old you are. There's certain professions that they say have a higher rate of death by suicide, including veterinarians, police officers, doctors, dentists. I saw real estate, realtors, financial planners. Again, just highlighting it doesn't discriminate. And so that's why it's an important topic to keep talking about.
It is an important topic, and really checking in with yourself. Like if you notice that you're having thoughts of suicide, just really being mindful of what you're feeling in the moment. Going back to, again, it was a really interesting page that I stumbled across with the Center for Disease and Control, because they mentioned that the numbers are increasing every year, but that they were saying so in 2018. So I mentioned them of deaths by suicide, but then they mentioned that about 10 million people have actually had thoughts of suicide. And then they said that about 3 million have thought about how they would die by suicide. And then about 1 million have attempted. So it's a lot of people out there, struggling. And like Beth mentioned, varying across different professions. Those are high stress professions that people tend to feel like they're alone and like they have no other way out. And for me, this is what I say to my clients too, is that when you start to have thoughts of suicide, I feel like it's a way that your brain is trying to find an escape from the problem. And so it's trying to figure out what other way you can try and escape from the problem. But that's really what I feel like your brain is trying to do. And Beth, you mentioned about the 80 or 75 to 85, was it?
75 and above, with 85 and above being highest.
Okay. And that kind of makes sense, especially because with my clients, I have about a handful who are over the age of 60. And during that age, you start to kind of think about, wow, end of life, or what do you want the rest of your life to look like? And so that can be depressing for some people, because like right now, my clients who are 65 and older, they're having that sense of nostalgia, right? Looking back and thinking about past mistakes and wishing that they could have changed or done things differently. Or if they feel like they're not in a place where they want to be, whether it be relationship wise or physically or work wise, so that can be a bit of a transition for individuals. So I could see how that age bracket could fit in.
I see that as well. And one thing I really work on with a lot of my clients, because something I see a lot of with the grief and loss side of things, and I'm going to highlight this difference, but there is a difference in wanting to end your life and not wanting to be here or not wanting to be in your current circumstances. And there's a distinction there, because when someone wants to end their life, and we'll talk about some of the warning signs in a minute, that's when they're kind of having those thoughts and they're looking at some possible ways and they're getting more serious about it. And I try to work with them around, like Robin said, it's your brain trying to find a way to escape. It's also your brain, I think, telling you, I don't like this, whatever this is, and I don't know how to cope with it. I don't know how to handle it. And I'm struggling to see a different way. And so if we can distinguish that difference of, I don't like my circumstances, then we have some room to work with clients around, okay, what's one thing you can change that will help to kind of help you start to re-engage in wanting to live again, versus someone who's like, I'm done. I'd like to end my life. I hope that difference makes sense. And we're probably going to say this a lot during this episode, but if you are experiencing suicidal thoughts and you are looking at plans and what that might look like for you, please, 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 here in the US, call 988, which is the Suicide and Crisis Hotline. If you would prefer to text, you can text the word TALK to 741-741, or you can call 988. And those are both available 24 hours a day. Please reach out.
Yes, that makes complete sense, Beth. I was nodding my head with you, along the way. There is a difference. And so I'm glad you made that distinction. And I'm also glad that you gave the numbers. Yes, if you are feeling like unsafe or feeling like you need to talk, there's always somebody, a listening ear on those numbers that Beth provided. They really rolled the 988 this past July to signify the importance behind mental health, right? Treating it just like you would physical health. So if you're not feeling well physically, people call 911. So if you're not feeling well mentally, it's okay to call 988 or to text the number that Beth gave.
So I think it's important to be aware of kind of what to look for in yourself, or if you see some of these things in someone that you know, so that you can hopefully try to help them. There are 3 categories of risk factors that people experience that lead them potentially to feel more suicidal. So mental health conditions like anxiety and depression, for example, physical health conditions like chronic pain, brain injury, and environmental factors. So if we don't have access to our basic needs like food and shelter, those are some factors that could potentially lead a person to have thoughts of suicide. Also, if there's a history in the family of suicide, so if your parent or sibling or other relatives have died by suicide, it does put others in the family at a higher risk.
I just want to add to that too. I think that it's because of the trauma too, associated with somebody close to you dying by suicide and the impact that it can have. And so it can be exacerbated, and that's how it can carry down to somebody else. Another thing that I want to add to what you said, Beth, the 3 conditions that you mentioned, is one thing that really stood out is when you said in terms of physical needs, as if our really basic needs aren't being met. And so I feel like there's a theory, and it's called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And one of them is that sense of belonging, right? And so I feel like that can add to a risk factor. As people, you can be included in a social environment, but if you don't have that sense of belonging, then that's when it can add to feelings of anxiety and depression and isolation. And it can exacerbate feelings of suicide, because you're feeling, well, nobody wants me around, or what value do I have to offer other people? Nobody likes me. And so I can just keep going down that path to thinking why should I even be around? So I just wanted to add that.
That's very true, because if you experience bullying or you've had a recent divorce or relationship ending or a sense of rejection for any reason, that prolonged stress can definitely be a factor.
Right.
And so can financial. I didn't cover that one earlier, but finances can be a huge prolonged stressor for a lot of people, and combined with other factors can cause someone to have feelings of suicide.
That's very true with financial. And so on my caseload, I feel like there's a lot of increased financial stress. And even on the news, it was an alarming statistic in Colorado. I don't want to misquote it, but I heard it on the news about a couple of weeks ago. They were saying that the number of evictions is increasing. And I think last year alone, there was between 18 to 25,000 evictions in the state of Colorado. And so finances is one of those basic needs, right? Money to survive. Feeling like you're being able to take care of yourself and your family, that adds to a sense of pride. And so if a person feels like they're not able to meet those financial needs, then again, it goes back to, well, what is my purpose? What is my value? So that actually leads into warning signs, right? So if you are communicating with somebody, you're like, hey, I haven't heard from so-and-so in a long time. I wonder how they're doing. And you reach out to them and you notice that their tone just seems a bit different. They seem more hopeless, or they start to use terminology like, I don't want to be here anymore. Again, just when you notice a shift in somebody, that's when you really should continue to check in and let them know that you're there. One of the warning signs can be transmitted through communication, whether it's through phone calls or text or emails. I know that this is also too, we've all mentioned this today, is that it's a myth that you're not going to put thoughts of suicide in somebody's head. So opening that dialogue creates that sense of safe space for them to explore the thoughts that they're having. Because even if you don't mention, hey, I'm really concerned, it seems like these thoughts you're having are suicide, chances are they've thought about it themselves, but are keeping it bottled up inside. And when you keep it bottled up inside, you start to ruminate. The thoughts start to swirl around and you don't have that outside perspective. So trying to listen to somebody, that listening ear, and letting them know that you care, that can be a really good one. Another warning sign is when people are starting to get rid of things like personal belongings, like, hey, do you want this ring? And if it's a really valuable ring that they love, or hey, if they have a cat or a dog or a pet and they're trying to find somebody to take care of that pet, really probing, say, well, hey, what's going on? Why are you giving away these things? Why are you looking for somebody to take care of whatever their beloved pet's name is? Another warning sign can be you notice that they're starting to engage in substance abuse, like alcohol or drugs, because what they're trying to do is numb themselves, trying to escape from that pain. But when in fact, those things can make them feel more depressed, because when it wears off, those problems are still going to be there. And then they try to up the ante by increasing the dosage or the amount of usage. And it doesn't work. And then also too, it clouds their thinking, and they may be more likely to engage in impulsive behavior, which is another warning sign, is that level of impulsivity that can cause a person to really act in the moment and not really process or step back from a situation.
A couple other ones going back, people often say they feel like a burden, they feel trapped. Listening for that kind of language from them can help you help someone else if you hear that. Also, they will often become more irritable or more agitated. They might actually call to say goodbye, which is a huge warning sign. And then they also will tend to, if they've been feeling really down for a while or not feeling well, and then they feel relieved, and you can kind of see that relief, that's also a warning sign for some people.
Very true, especially the latter, right? Well, you'll hear people say, but I didn't see it coming. It was very unexpected. They seemed happy. They seemed like they were in a good place. And some people won't be open about sending a blatant text or a phone call. But like Beth mentioned, is that you'll see, again, a change in their mood to where it's more like at peace, more euphoric, because they feel like they have a solution to help them escape, that feeling of escape from their problems.
So 988 is the number you can call, and you can text the word talk to 741-741. And they're both really good, but what if someone doesn't want to call those lines or use those lines? What can they do? And that's a hard one. I mean, I tend to turn to social media a lot with the caveat that it can be a challenge, but it also can be very helpful. But I think while I much prefer people having in-person community to belong to, sometimes you got to start somewhere else. And online is perfectly fine if you can find a supportive community. The one nice thing with online support, if you can find a group that you're comfortable belonging to and that you trust reaching out to, depending on if that group is worldwide or nationwide, or there could be somebody around almost 24 hours a day that might see that post and reach out and respond and give support. So there can be a lot of comfort in that for some people.
I agree. And I like how you included supportiveness, right? Because online can be very convenient and it can allow people more access than they would traditionally have with face-to-face or in person. And so National Alliance for Mental Health, they have online or in person. And so maybe they do have a 24/7 option. I'm not for sure, but I know that they are a good source of resources to look into. In terms of other supports online, it can even, just because you're facing a mental health crisis or thinking of suicide, doesn't necessarily mean, let's say, maybe you could take a break from thinking about whatever is bothering you and reaching out to somebody and not necessarily talking about what's bothering you. So engaging in online groups that fit a certain hobby or interest of yours, that can be advantageous too. I think that some people just want to know that they have somebody there and somebody who gets them or who something in common with. One of my clients terminated last Thursday and did a maintenance plan. It has what triggers you, risk factors, what to do for self-care, what to do for coping, your social supports. But yeah, all of those to help you and have a set plan to recognize those warning signs and triggers before you get too deep into the midst of anxiety or depression.
I think if you talk to anyone who has experienced really intense thoughts of suicide or had a plan or even tried to end their life, and you talk to them when they've been able to kind of get their footing again and they are stronger and they have a more solid foundation, they will all tell you, and I can speak from my experience with clients I've worked with who have been there and are doing better now, it's a work in progress and they're never as far down as they were initially when those thoughts come up again sometimes. But it's because they've worked really hard to figure out what does help them. And they've worked extremely hard to build those things in place for their lives and find that purpose and find what gives them value. And they've worked hard to cultivate that. And that's what helps them continue to move forward.
Right. It can be hard, right? Like you said, working hard. And so there are ups and downs throughout the process. But the point is to try to keep moving forward in the midst of what you're going through and looking back and seeing how far you've come and realizing that it's possible to keep moving forward.
So again, if you are experiencing suicidal thoughts and you've begun looking at planning and you're taking it steps further, or you're just in a crisis of any kind and need some mental health support, you can call 988 here in the United States, or you can text the word TALK to the number 741741. And those are available 24 hours a day in the United States.
And they will be with you in the moment to help you safety plan, to help you, think of coping strategies, whatever it may be. But just always know that you're never alone.
You are never alone. And if you can reach out to anyone, if you can reach over and pet your dog or your cat or talk to your bird or anything that you can do in that moment that is building your life and helping you have that, as we say, life worth living, or helping you get through that really painful, unbearable moment, that's going to help. And then you can look back and see that you had a lot of strength and a lot of courage. And it will change and it does get better.
Yes. No, it really does.
So as always, if there is any topic you would like us to cover, if you'd like to give us any feedback on our episodes, please reach out to Blind Abilities. We do get your messages and we do respond on future podcast episodes. And this was a very heavy topic. So if you're listening still, I encourage you to take a deep breath. I encourage you to go do something a little more uplifting and fun for yourself. And as always, please, at the same time, take care and stay grounded.
Until next time, take care.
Oh yeah. Wednesday with Beth and Robin, gonna settle it down. Oh yeah, get your feet planted on the ground.
For more podcasts with the blindness perspective, check us out on the web at www.blindabilities.com. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you want to leave us some feedback, give us a call at 612-367-6093. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for listening, and until next time, bye-bye.
Wellness and taking care of ourselves. It's all about you and taking care of yourself. Oh, yeah.
When we share
what we see
through each other's eyes, we can then begin to bridge the gap
between the limited expectations and the reality
of blind ability.